360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020, and it is based in Toronto, Canada, and it is a part of International Men's Day, IMD. IMD has been serving for more than 20 years, and nearly 19 countries around the world join together uh, and doing various activities regularly. So IMD follows a six pillars, and um, Voice of Men 360 also follows that too. Voice of Men feels so proud to be part of IMD. We have a special guest today on discuss on unlock the door beyond sexual abuse. She will be discussing more about it. Why don't men typically report sexual abuse? How common is male sexual abuse? We generally hear about lots of women sexual abuse. No, most of them don't talk about the men's sexual abuse. So she's going to discuss how common is male sexual abuse. How does being sexual violated affect a person, and why it is important to talk about this topic? So these are very important topics, and please tune in with us for other next 30 minutes. Um, I'm so pleased to be a host today and have a chance to introduce our special guest speaker, Miss Deb Maybury. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to know more about her? She was born in a small town in northern Ontario, grew up in Kingston, and moved to Toronto for her higher education in 80s. She strongly believed behavioral specialist Dr. Joan DeMartini's verse, everything is on the way, not in the way. Everything is on the way, not in the way. Very inspirational quote. She tends to think that most of what we experience was not planned by say, but she does believe it is ultimately our choice of how we perceive and deal with life's experience. She has always been a listener, even at her young age. She comes from an era and family where the belief was that such children were not encouraged to express emotions or share what they were thinking and feelings. That environment suppressed her, and from that point, she began to think why and for what reason do people think that way, which led her to an interest in psychology. Later, she graduated in psychology and then she posed any further education or employment. She soon got an opportunity to use her artistic ability without formal training. She accepted a job and was pleasantly surprised to realize she could actually earn a living creating design. That decision led her to entrepreneurship and a life path designs distance, yet entwined with her desire to utilize her listening and creative therapeutic instincts and skills. She spent 30 years as a business owner and then a graphic artist, self defense instructor, real estate investor, coach, speaker, author, a referee, etc. She realized compilation book called Unlock. She released a compilation book called Unlock the Door Beyond the Sexual Abuse. She experienced a unique ancient healing method such as sweat dogs, trance dances, rebirthing, and shamanic breathing techniques. All these weave within her current psychotherapy and coaching businesses. She had to be a volunteer, a facilitator with the gatehouse where the adults go to process their childhood sexual abuse. This ultimately led her back to her professional as a therapist. She chose she chose to attend the Transformational Art College (TAC) for a more experiential in-person education. One representing her fundamental spiritual belief that cannot separate the mind thoughts um, from the body and the soul. Um, she cannot, and she and into 2015 she enrolled in a spiritual psychotherapy program and graduated in 2018. Shortly afterward, she was hired by TAC and to join the faculty part time. So this is her life journey, and I'm so proud to welcome our guest, Miss Deb. Hi, Deb.
Hi there. That was quite an introduction. Somebody's been visiting my website.
Okay, so thank you for joining with us and willing to share some important aspect of sexual abuse. You have a wide background and unlimited experiences, so we are looking forward to learning a lot more from you today.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to both of you for having me on the program. I've done a lot of research over the years, and when I originally wrote "Unlock the Door Beyond Sexual Abuse," it was because I had a vision and I was questioning what I was doing in my life and challenges, and I had this vision to write this book. And I won't go too much into that, but let's just say it was sort of dictated to me to write this compilation book. And within the book, there are stories from men and women, and the chapters are primarily me interviewing the individuals in order to support others on a healing journey. So it was really important for me to write it that way, as opposed to, sharing all dirty details and things like that. Because sexual abuse is a taboo topic, and it's not something that a lot of people sign up to hear about or to listen to. But the truth is that it is very prevalent in our society. And so I'm just going to read some general information that I have, and then I'll just open it up for questions. So childhood sexual abuse, it's a significant problem. It happens in every culture, in every race, every gender, every social economical, environment. And it's something that has been taboo and has not been talked about. The statistics change somewhat, but overall, it's more or less agreed that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 to 7 boys before they reach their 18th birthday will have been sexually violated. And there has been a myth for many years that the perpetrators are strangers. In schools, we hear about the stranger danger, and children are taught to fear strangers. However, the majority of the violations occur within the circle of trusted people. So the family, the immediate family, the extended family, coaches, teachers, neighbors, people from where the families worship. And it is more common that the child will know the person, and that is in fact how it happens, because there's an establishment of trust in that relationship, and then that is violated. um, Men aren't supposed to be the ones that are violated. Men are thought to be strong and powerful. However, boys are violated more often than people want to acknowledge. When the Me Too movement came out, what was that, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, women were jumping on that, and they were finally allowed to have a voice. And then some men started to say, me too. And there were some women that had resistance. It was like, no, you don't get it. You don't understand. Majority of men are the perpetrators or the offenders. But then other women went, wait a second here. Let's not have any gender bias here. That's not right. Yes, more men are the perpetrators, but there are females that are perpetrators as well. There are women or girls that are violated, and there are boys that are violated. And we have to be there and create a safe environment for both of them. And you know, with men, what often happens, so they're violated as children, and when they get older, yes, sort of what's the distinction or the difference, primarily between a woman who was violated as a child and a man. And it's awful to say, but there's almost an expectation that a female at some point will be sexually violated. There'll be something. There's a large spectrum on how that violation occurs, but even like being whistled at, or being looked at a certain way, or being touched various ways inappropriately, it's almost expected. So there is still shame and a sense of feeling violated and dirty and objectified. But for a boy, neither one has a voice often as they're growing up. But for the boy that grows into the man, now he's questioning his masculinity. There's a really huge sort of veil of shame. And with so many men that I've worked with, they've questioned their sexuality. They don't want to say that they were violated by a man if in fact the violator was a man. 25% of the time for a man, approximately, it would be a woman violating him. So a man will shut down. And we know what happens when men shut down. They become quiet. They're naturally not sharing their feelings the way women do. Women are known for, talking to their friends more about really private things, whereas men, they become emotionally shut down. And certainly to say that they were violated as a child or as a teenager, that's a very hard thing to admit for a man. From the men that are in the groups that I facilitate or that I see one on one. And one thing that men really do, women do this too, it's called numbing, where you try not to feel anything because it's so painful to bring back those memories and those experiences. Now, what does numbing look like? Often for a woman, it turns into depression, quiet, isolation. Um, if she feels like she's been objectified, she may value her sexuality less. She may become more promiscuous or really shut it down and not want to be involved with a man at all, right? Because there's so many layers of fear. With a man, more often, it becomes a type of aggression, an anger, either that implodes. More men that have been sexually violated will have heart attacks, right? Men and women have health issues, a variety of physical health issues, more dis-ease, and also the mental trauma that's happening. So there was a study with men in prison, and for aggressive acts, for violent type of acts. Many of them had either been sexually violated, certainly physically abused, or emotionally abused. Women in prison, there's a huge number of them that have been sexually violated. In fact, a very well-known Canadian addiction specialist and speaker, Gabor Mate, he's a best-selling author in Canada and in the States. He wrote the foreword in my book, Unlock the Door. And what he said in that foreword in the book, which I think is the price of the book, just in his foreword, he worked on the streets of Vancouver on the east side, which is very highly populated by an addictive, community. And he was there for 12 years. There was not one, not one. Can you imagine? Not one female out of hundreds over 12 years that had not been sexually violated. So these women had turned to addiction, not solely because of the abuse, there's probably other reasons, but largely because of that. Many of the men that he interviewed had also been sexually violated, at least at a minimal level, and many of them had been physically and emotionally violated. So childhood sexual abuse shows up in many ways. Addictions is a huge component of being violated because of the numbing. If I don't have to think about it, I don't have to feel it. If I don't think about it, I also don't deal with it. So it shows up then in families and anger and upset and shut down. It shows up in work environments like you can't control me, and we can't get along. I'm hyper vigilant all the time if I've been violated as a child. My amygdala is firing like somebody's after me. I have to protect myself all the time. So I don't know if you want to ask some questions, because I could keep on talking and talking about this topic, the mental illness. So it's not only the impact on the individual and the family and friends of the individual, it shows up in our communities, because people that have been sexually violated, they have a much higher incidence of mental illness type of, situation. So, the support, the community support in terms of the costs to our society, to our financial institutions, the medications that happens, the drug addiction. So that's a cost to our environment as well. So it affects everybody economically, and people don't realize, what is happening. People that, have more serious mental health issues. This shows up a lot. Suicide, when you can't numb anymore, there are many people that, take their lives because of being violated. There have been people, where I facilitate at the Gatehouse. almost everybody in a group has something mentally that's going on: depression, anxiety, self-loathing, low self-esteem, low self-worth. This is a person that doesn't get to idolize, or what's the word I'm looking for? I've lost it. Um, they don't get to be what they want to be, what they could have been, because they're so restricted by so much inner pain. Um, Anyways, I'm going to let you, if you want to ask some questions on that amount. I'm not sure where we are with time, but I'd like to make sure that you can ask some questions.
Yeah, I wonder how adults get sexual abuse because they at least have some knowledge about it, right? So how do they fall into that trap?
Well, if we're talking about something older, it is a sort of different parameters that are going on in childhood sexual abuse. I mean, there's a hierarchy in both situations. So childhood, it's a little bit different because a child can't physically fight back. We're programmed in our amygdala, in our brain, to either fight, flee, or freeze or hide. And a child typically can't do any of those. So they're victimized quite easily. In terms of an adult being violated, a lot of the times, the landscape has been set. Most people that are violated in different ways as adults experience some of that as a child, so they don't see it coming in some ways, or it's some type of familiar behavior, so maybe they're more drawn to a more chaotic kind of lifestyle. So somebody who does drugs or does alcohol, and then they're drawn into that. Maybe they're drawn, like for a woman, drawn to the bad guy. um, so those types of things show up. And then how do you get out? I go into high schools, and I teach something called realistic self-defense for women to high school girls, and I also teach this in businesses to women. And when you get into a relationship, it's a lot harder to get out of it than to not get into it at all. So people can be trapped, and then once you start to have, you know, a family, you become connected economically with an individual. It's a lot harder to get out of these situations. And some, blindsided by love. Sometimes people get married also to get out of a bad family situation that they have been in. I know a number of people that they would have done anything just to get away from home when they were being violated in the home. And they left at a very young age, and then they end up getting married, because how does a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old take care of themselves? Unless they have a real strong determination. And a lot of people do. A lot of people do get out of those situations and become very successful people as well.
Um, so what triggers abusers to abuse? Because you said some addictions and stuff may be the cause, but what else triggers the abusers to trap or abuse other people?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, somebody once said, what's the number one thing we can do to reduce the prevalence of childhood sexual abuse? And a lot of people expected me to say, educate children. And that is a factor. I do believe education should be in our education system, because a lot of the time the violations occur within the home, and the child doesn't have the words. They don't even understand they're being violated. Many men and women, they didn't even realize as a child that that was a violation, that that was abuse, because that's what it was like growing up in the home, right? Um, but I didn't say education. What I said was we need to work with the people that are the offenders and the perpetrators, identify who they are, and even capture them or get them at an earlier age. So if we're educating children, we're not only helping the ones that could be violated potentially or will be, we're also setting a stage where young children realize that this is not appropriate. We don't touch people in a sexual manner, at a young age. And we certainly don't do that when we're 14 and a child is 6 years old. And the kids need to be educated, what is appropriate and what is not, and to know it's not unhealthy. I personally believe, and I think the studies sort of demonstrate, that most of the people that are violated, they don't end up being perpetrators themselves. They shut down. They're in a lot of pain. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does happen, But I know that, people that have been violated, to suggest that then they're going to be a perpetrator of sexual violence, that is, uh, very upsetting to them. And, myself included, as somebody that was violated as a child. Somebody ever suggested that, it's like, I'm not going to get angry because I'm too educated for that at this point. But it's not always the case. The majority of the time, it's not. Men that are violated as young boys, they often become angry, so they're acting out in an angry way. So it's more likely that a young boy who's violated will become a violent man, because he's imploding. He's holding all that in, that shame, that anger, that guilt, and that frustration. And we haven't created an environment for men to talk. There are groups at the gatehouse for men who've been violated, and there are, therapists like myself, that open that door and talk to men, and so they can get beyond the shame and the frustration and the anger that they have, because if they don't have a place to process it, it's going to show up when they get angry. You see, sports, like somebody like Theo Fleury is well known, Sheldon Kennedy, these are hockey players that wrote books and have done movies and documentaries. They were angry, angry, angry men because they didn't have an avenue to release that anger. So it's so important that men have the opportunity with other men or with therapists to release some of that anger, so they can get to the heart and the true emotions, the person, the man that they want to be, that they long to be, that they haven't had the opportunity to fully meet and share, because they're so shut down, they're so numbed, and they don't even know where to begin.
Ms. Deb, what exactly your message from your book, Beyond Sexual
Yeah,
Abuse? So,
well, I should show
what are
the
you trying
book.
to say
you know
beyond?
you've got
Mhm.
it there.
Yeah.
The main message is what's in the small letters right here. You can see it. What is so important
Yeah.
is that people know that they're not alone, because basically everybody who's violated at some point, it's in isolation. It's typically not a group. It can be, but it's typically not. And people, little boys and little girls, they feel like they're alone. They can't articulate what they're feeling. They have nobody to share it with. There are some that have the strength that do tell and report it. Some positive results and some not so positive results in that. But my message in the book is that you're not alone. There are other people that have gone through this and that are processing it and are moving beyond it and through it. And it's not in the type, oh, just forget about it. People are told, oh, just let that go. It was a long time ago. That's not easy to do that. That's, wearing a mask to hide your face, as opposed to opening up and truly sharing what's going on. So you're not alone. The second thing is, it's not your fault. When you are sexually violated, whether you're a child or an adult, and whether it's a man or a woman, and men are sexually violated as well, and they're also abused physically and verbally when they're men as well, young men. It does happen. It's less prevalent, so we talk about it less, but it's still enough. Anybody getting violated at all, it's too much. We can't condone that in any way, shape, or form. So it's never a person's fault. A lot of the time, depending on the age of the individual, I have a 3 year a woman who was a 3-year-old client. I know a man in his 50s. He believed it was his fault, and this happens all the time. So as an adult, you look at it from a different perspective. I should have ran. I should have told. Why didn't I do this, or this to get out of there? And then as an adult, you see all these options. But as a child, you don't see that. You're you're just confused. You freeze. So it's never your fault. It doesn't matter if you didn't fight, if you didn't run, right? You typically will freeze. And even if there was pleasure involved in that. And that's another thing that people don't like to talk about, is because our bodies are designed to respond to being stimulated in a certain way. And I know people don't want to talk about it, but sometimes there is some pleasure involved. But when a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old, there's a hierarchy. That person is still overpowering them emotionally. and they have no right to do that. Just because the body responds in a certain way does not make it okay. Not at all. It's always a violation. And that's where a lot of shame comes in, especially for men, especially for men later on. Is that, well, my body responded, so I felt like I was to blame or I was at fault. No, your body's designed to respond. That does not make it okay for the person to do that. It's never okay, and it's never your fault. I wrote a song actually called "It's Not Your Fault." It's on my YouTube channel station, and it's never your fault.
Yeah, Miss Deb, would you like to share any real life experience or stories of anyone? I know the confidentiality is a matter, but just any real story would you like to share with us today?
um well, let me share sort of a generalization, and I can incorporate it a few people what happened to them, and I'm going to use men, obviously. So, you have a young boy who's having a regular, happy, joyful experience in life. And then an extended family member, moves in. And unbeknownst to the parents, the boy is violated. I'm going to use some clues as things to look for too in a child, okay? So this happy-go-lucky child shifts all of a sudden. He's quiet. He's isolating himself a little bit. He starts to do less well at school. you know he wants to go one place versus another place. He doesn't want to be maybe going to a soccer practice or something, and the parents just think, oh, he doesn't like soccer anymore. They don't connect that. Okay, well, that's that extended family member that's taking that boy to soccer. He doesn't want to go to school. Well, the parents think something's wrong at school. Well, no, the extended family member is maybe picking him up after school on his way home, and that's where the violations are happening, right? Maybe a child is engaging in what would be like inappropriate sexual talk. So he starts to use different words that he never used before, or he starts to express himself sexually, more interest in something that's inappropriate for his age, right? And then the boy goes along, and then he starts getting in fights, and he starts acting out at school. He starts talking back to his parents. There are different things that start, and it just keeps going on. And then he goes away to school, but then he drops out of school, and then all of a sudden he's drinking, and he doesn't want to work, and his parents can't figure out what's going on with him, right? And then he gets married, and then the relationship, they're fighting all the time. He doesn't know how to connect because he's been shut down so much. He has children, he's distant from his children. He doesn't know how to bond and connect. He's frustrated. And then when his child goes to school, he's terrified what's going to happen to his child. He's hyper vigilant. He doesn't let his child participate in sports. He doesn't let his child, so it can go on and on and on and on. And then one day, he starts to have health issues, and he starts going to the doctor. He starts taking medication. Maybe he gets addicted to certain types of pain medication. And so there's a number of things. I'm creating the kind of one of the worst case scenarios. And, one thing for men that, is talked about a lot is suicide. One of the highest rates for suicide is in, men's, I think it's like 40, 45 to 55. Like, it's in a really high, I don't quote me on the numbers, but it's up in that area where, what is this about? What is life? And then if he has that type of a background, that he's never processed it and integrated that into the now of his life, that's a huge impact, right? And then he starts to think, I have no self-worth. Why bother? Why am I here? And when a man attempts suicide, it's usually not an attempt, because a man will do it in a very aggressive way where the probability of survival is a lot less. A woman who had a similar sort of path, she might start taking, the extra medication, so numbing through more medication. She might overdose with medication, right? She's more likely to be found than a man. Women have a series of attempts. Men usually not. It does happen, of course, but so this is sort of like a pattern in a man's life that if you combine a bunch of those characteristics together, there's a good chance that something's going on with that man that he's never been able to process. And they can, a man that works night to day and never stops, he's numbing something. He may love his job, but there may be something else there too. So when there's a combination of things, a child that's past bedwetting stage and all of a sudden starts bedwetting, a child that's an active bully, right? Or is bullied, they can't stand up for themselves or they fight back. There's a number of factors that you can see throughout the course of a lifetime when sexual violations have occurred.
Deb, maybe this is my last question. How do you help your clients in your practice? What the unique treatment method you use?
Thanks for asking that. I graduated originally in 1988 with an honors degree in psychology. Then I did life, which you mentioned. Always doing healing modalities. So I have a variety of very interesting things that I have done. I just graduated a few years ago as a psychotherapist. So a few of the things that I do. Well, listen. Primarily, listen, hold space, and because I've worked, with so many people that have been violated, I don't take it on. You can tell me what's going on, what you've experienced, and I'm not going to take that on. I'm not going to doubt you. I'm not going to question you. I'm going to listen and I'm going to believe what it is that you have to say. So, talk therapy in itself, holding sacred space. I actually teach psychotherapists how to hold that space for clients. So a couple of the modalities that I do utilize, we do inner child work. That's very common. Sometimes there's two chair work, meaning there's nobody in that chair, but you get to talk to that person who violated you and release some of that anger or let out some of that emotion. That's something that's very common. Two other things that I do that are really quite unique. One is called havening. It's been around for about 10 years, and more people or therapists are utilizing it. It works on a physical level in the brain. So when somebody's been traumatized, there is a distinctly different kind of brain landscape that has happened when somebody's experienced trauma. And this is proven. This is science now. This is not, you can't see my legs cut off, right? So, you could say that I haven't been violated, or you could doubt me, false memory syndrome. No, if somebody says that they've been violated, they likely have been violated. So in the brain, there's electrochemical signals that are going back and forth in the neurons. And so havening activates that area, and then it depotentiates the charge. So they always say, memory without a charge is called wisdom. So we can physically reduce some of that charge with havening, and we can build resiliency. It's so important. When somebody's having a hard time, they don't think about their beautiful characteristics, their wonderful qualities that people admire in them. They don't think about that. They think about it's all negative. That's all they can think, because they're in survival mechanism. They're hyper vigilant all the time. You can't stop and smell the roses, because they're so in a survival mode. So havening is something I use, and I also utilize something called spiritual technology, or it's also called accelerated evolution, and that is where we can go on a journey more into the subconscious and allow somebody to process, because sometimes people can't articulate feelings, they can't talk about things. So by talking about other things, they can still share a part of themselves until they become familiar, um, or comfortable is probably a more appropriate word, more comfortable with talking. And it takes trust. It takes a lot of trust for people to share. And we really honor that as therapists. I know somebody who was with a therapist for 2 years before he said, you know what, the reason why I originally came here was because I was sexually violated as a child, and it's taken me 2 years to actually trust you. But in that time, he was able to talk about the effects on
Yeah.
his life, even though he wasn't talking about what the primary concern was.
Deb, I have a small question regarding that question. So, do you believe that you can heal your clients 100%?
Well, everybody is different. Nobody can give a guarantee on somebody's mental health and well-being, because everybody is here having their own experience in this body, right? Depending on what your beliefs are. And I like to think that somebody can get a little bit better, if there is a connection. Not everybody is connected. Like everybody that comes to me, I've had a few people where we've just agreed, what this, we just don't connect. There's just something that's going on that maybe I talk too fast, or maybe the person is quieter, or maybe their belief structure is completely different than mine. Maybe their values are completely different than mine. So what I do believe is, if there is a connection between you, the person who has been violated, the person that's hurting, the person that's in pain, and the therapist, whether it's me or somebody else, right? If there is a connection there, then you will be in a better place during the course of the therapy, or at the conclusion of the therapy, than you were in the beginning. If you're not with somebody where you're developing a greater understanding of yourself, of your behavior, of your actions, and the actions and behaviors of people around you, you need to shift. You need to be where you feel comfortable, you feel you have a connection, where you experience trust, where you feel like you're being heard, right? And where you have an opportunity to bridge the silence towards the healing, because you can't heal in silence. You cannot heal alone. That's one thing for sure that I believe. My belief, but you can't do it alone. Otherwise, you would have done it. We would do it. We can certainly help ourselves by reading, doing courses. We can get a greater understanding. But when we can let it out and articulate it and journal it and share it with a psychotherapist or psychologist, whichever, then we can get to a place where we can gain insights. The Gatehouse is an amazing place. I've mentioned that a few times, where people come together, and then you can have that, me too. That's why I feel that way. Oh my gosh, I thought I was alone. I thought nobody else has experienced this. You're not alone. You're never at fault. And yes, there is a pathway towards healing. What that looks like to different people is different. Some people want to forget. That's healing. You're not going to forget, but you can repurpose what happened. You can look at it from different eyes, with a different perception, and you can give a different meaning to it. What I experienced as a child, I wouldn't wish upon anybody, but I wouldn't change one fraction of it, not one, because I kind of like where Deb is. It's not perfect. I'm not perfect, but I like where I am and what I've been able to do. And I never expected to be somebody that was going to be talking about sexual abuse and have clients that are talking about sexual abuse, amongst many, many other things, but on a daily basis. I never dreamed that. But I am part of their healing. And there's nothing greater than the feeling when somebody says, thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. I feel just emotional thinking about that. When people have read Unlock the Door, the testimonies that I've received from that, the private messages saying, you saved my life. There's nothing better than that feeling. Nothing better. And what's happening here with 360, that is as an avenue, an opportunity for people to come to a safe place, come together as a community, acknowledge what's going on in their life, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever perception you have of your life, but you come together with a community, people that care and understand and support you, and you can find a new home with trust and people, and you can restructure the way you think, your narrative. It's so incredible. It's that people's narrative is so biased into negativity, but there's so much positive, and you just need, if you can change the lens just a little bit here and a little bit there, and be with other people that have a different view, you can change, you can heal, you can come to a very different place than where you are at or were at.
So, would you like to give an end note for our audience? Any bullet points or something, end notes?
Um, well, I think I've given a lot of notes throughout. I think I've shared a lot of information. Again, you're not alone. It's not your fault. My website is debmayburytherapy.com, and I have a YouTube channel as well, just Deb Maybury. I, I'm a therapist, and I'm somebody that was violated as a child, and what happened to us isn't pretty, but it doesn't have to dictate the type of life that we have moving forward. You want to honor where you've been, but also create where you want to go. And thank you for having me here. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you very much.
the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Deb, for being here today. And we have not enough time to share lots of information as you have a wide experience and knowledge about it. So definitely we will meet again sometimes um, later. I really appreciate for your time and the effort for being here and sharing some valuable information. I'm sure it will help not only boys and men out there, but many more people all over the world.
Thank
We
you.
share her link. If you like to buy a book, please, we share the link under our video.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
again.
Thank you.
And some announcements. Voice of Men is running a few live talk shows on a weekly basis. Open up, looking for guests Saturdays at 10 a.m. In Tamil on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. EST. Monthly webinars on Saturdays at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. 10:30 a.m. and 11 to 11 a.m. Sorry. And panel discussion on Saturdays evening 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We need volunteers. If you're really interested, please contact us. Voice of Men is looking to work with professional community organizations, NGOs, social workers, trainers, coaches, mentors, health professionals, and so on. So please join with us, and we like to join your hands. Um, and we have an art competitions. Share your feelings and emotions through art, drawing, paintings, music, songs, short film, poem, article, animation, photography, comics, fashion, performance, any other art form you can think of. Yes, you can do it. No expectation or no limits for your participants, no barriers. Deadline tomorrow, Sunday, December 2020. One more day ahead. There are valuable prizes. First prize 250 Canadian dollar, and second prize 175 Canadian dollar, and the third prize is 100 Canadian dollar. Art competition sponsored by RCP, Right Choice Professionals, and Wood Gold Barristers and Solicitors, Macomat and Agostino Mortgage, and website support DF Credit Solution. If you'd like to know more about Voice of Men 360, contact information 437 889 8329, 437 889 8329, or email info at voiceofmen360.org. Official website www.voiceofmen360.org. So we are on Facebook, Voice of Men 360, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Please subscribe. Please subscribe, like, and share our videos on your YouTube, Voice of Men 360. Thank you for watching today's webinar, and special thank you for our guest Deb for making this morning so special. Thank you, audience, for listening. I'm sure Ms. Deb's word will motivate you, and this is the time to open your heart and share your stories with that. That would be a lesson too for other people. Thank you. Have a great and safe weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Just a quick note, the art competition actually we extended to January 25th. So that's, if anybody wants to join, please send your, creatives. All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.